Hello everyone. Today my little family and I are exploring the Lost Trampas Creek and I found a couple of really interesting plants that I thought I'd show you.
This is called equisetum. Oops. It's also known as horsetail. It's really interesting because, let's see if I can, this is an old piece. But it's hollow on the inside, so it doesn't have a vascular system like other plants. It's a different kind of vascular system. Vascular meaning like veins, moving water and liquid. It is said to have been used as like a little broom. I don't really know why they call it horsetail. It doesn't really look like horsetail, but this is a wonderful medicinal herb that is helpful for joint pain and helpful for inflammation. And you oftentimes find it near creeks. You won't really find it anywhere else, pretty much near anything that's wet. I have a bunch of cattails. They kind of look like corn dogs, if you're into that sort of thing. And if I were to pull off that brown part, it would be a big fluff, and I'll see if I can grab one to do that for you.
So the cattails are if you see these, they're a signal that water is nearby. And that would be super, super helpful if you were living off of the land, like indigenous people would. So they would, scour the land and try and find fresh water, and they would look for these. They would look for the cattails. Because if they found them, they knew that fresh water was nearby. Another thing that they would do is actually eat the cattails. Now this I think is too far matured, so they wouldn't eat it now because it would just be like like eating a cotton ball, which wouldn't taste very good. But before it gets to this stage, they would roast them and actually eat them. Once it gets to this stage, it's really difficult. I think I would need a knife to open it up or something sharp. Oh, there we go. Makes little, oops, let's see if I can get another piece, little fluffs. And they would sometimes use that to as insulation in their homes, or they would use it as insulation in their, like if they're wearing garments, they would also put it in their mattresses, underneath their mattresses. Very similar to the bryophytes, right, that they would use to keep themselves warm. They would also use them in diapers. So for little babies, this would be super absorbent and also super soft. So they'd use it for little ones.
Of course, pretty much anywhere you go around here, you're going to see this guy, which is that plantain plant, also known as white man's footsteps. And this plant is wonderful for the immune system. It's also wonderful for any cuts or scrapes. Also, if you get stung by a mosquito or a bee, it's wonderful to chew up and place on the sting site. I got a sting right in the middle of my circle over the summer, and I just simply chewed it up, put it on my little stinger area, and the pain was gone within 5 minutes and it never returned. So this is a truly magical plant. A little further and look at them. The cattails are poofing. I'm sure there's a real scientific term for that, but I think poofin's good. Look at them. Those are wind dispersing seeds. They're super light and fluffy, but you can see them flying away. So as the wind catches the fluff, it takes the seeds and will spread the seeds so they can grow in more places along the little creek. So we are standing in the creek now, and you can see this green kind of slimy stuff. Well, it is algae. So these are it's a plant, and it's obviously very different than the plants that live on land because this lives in the water. And it does a couple of things. So it does photosynthesize, meaning it does photosynthesis. It is taking carbon dioxide and sunlight and turning it into sugars and oxygen. It also is food for some of these little critters, these little bugs. And if there were crawdads or fish in this area, they would also probably eat the algae. Another thing that the algae does, which is really cool, is provides a safe little home for maybe baby fish, maybe baby crawdads, maybe adults. But it's a nice little safe home for all of these critters because it's like this nice little protectant layer that critters can go underneath or go inside of, and they probably wouldn't get eaten. The bryophytes, so many bryophytes, and way down there is a group of ducks. So the presence of ducks means that there's food for them. So they're probably eating that algae. They also might be eating little fish in the water. I haven't seen any yet, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any. Right over here is a little waterfall, so this is as far as I'm gonna walk. Back that direction was pretty natural, but then because this is a city, we've got it coming into this concrete kind of dam area. Not dam, but just it's gonna be more controlled in this area to prevent flooding the houses nearby.
Noticing when we throw leaves in the waterfall, if you throw them up here, they go down the waterfall. But if you put it over here on the side, sometimes it looks like they should go that way, but instead they turn and they go back a little bit. And an eddy is like a current that you see by the ocean or in a river. That's called. Yeah, that one went down, and look at the one on the side. It didn't go down. Why didn't it go down? So this is called a back eddy. If you get an eddy on the side where it catches it, sometimes if the side of the river is curved, instead of all the water flowing that way, some of the water will turn and almost create like a little spiral around here where things will pull it back to the side of the creek or even spin them around. And that happens in the ocean and in the bay as well. If you're close to the side, even if the current's all going one way, sometimes it'll actually swing and push back the other direction.
After exploring the creek for a little while, we ended up kind of hiking back up the creek bed into just kind of this open meadow area, and we found some bones. Now, what I'm going to show you is just the clips of kind of our thought process as we were finding the bones and trying to figure out what on earth this animal was. Now, this thought process that we were going through mimics the scientific method of scientific thinking, right? We're observing, we're having questions, then we come up with a hypothesis, right? Oh, we see this bone, we're observing kind of where it is, or we're observing the kind of teeth that are in this jawbone, and then we come up with an idea. Oh, we think it's a coyote, and that was what our first hypothesis was. Now, as you'll see, we go through these videos, as we're exploring the land and getting new information. So our first information was a jawbone, right? Then our next information was a skull. The information after that was the fur. And the information after that was the scat, the poop. And as we got new information, we started making new hypotheses until we came to our conclusion at the very end, which I'll explain to you when we get there.
It's a piece of a skull with some teeth. Now those are like molars, and it's only a part of the skull, so we don't know what it's from, but maybe we'll take those molars home and examine them a little bit more. And we're gonna scan this little clearing to see if we can find maybe who belongs to those teeth. A ton of cool bones. We're gonna take them home and get some good footage for you up close, but this is the fur. Super, we are not gonna take this home because it is attached to a bunch of skin and not feeling in the mood. But we're looking, and based on the mandible, which is the lower jaw, we are thinking it might be a carnivore of some sort, and we think maybe a coyote. Sorry to make you look at poop, but there is an absolute massive hole in the ground here with just tons of poop. Now, originally we were like, oh, the size of the poop plus the size of the skull and the fur probably indicates it's a cat, because it definitely has canines. But then, upon closer inspection, please watch out, Willow, with that stick. There are seeds in the poop. Like a straight up big old seed right there, and a bunch of little seeds. So we looked it up online. Turns out this is the scat of a raccoon, which would match, and we'll give you a better view in a little bit. Look at that little skull. It's not a very big skull. That would match the size of a raccoon. Whoa.
As you can see, we kind of went through this whole multiple thought processes to get to our final decision that it was probably a raccoon. Now, I'm just going to go over kind of that thought process, right? First thing we found was the molars. And by the molars, I am not educated enough to know an animal by its molars. But then we found the lower mandible, right, the jaw bone, and we found these teeth. Now, on humans, they're not super sharp because we're not going out and attacking animals in the raw flesh. If we are eating meat, it's cooked and it's processed. Whereas an animal with sharp canines, is what those teeth are called, they're going to be going out and maybe attacking smaller animals or larger animals, right? So once we found those really sharp teeth right here, you see that guy? That's big old tooth. Once we found that, we realized that, okay, this is definitely not like a squirrel tooth. Obviously those teeth are too big for squirrels, but it kind of got us on the track of, oh, this might be something kind of predatory. Now, our first thought was coyote, and I'm not really sure why, but I was like, those look really big, maybe it's a coyote. And then when we found that big chunk of fur, I was like, oh, this definitely could be coyote because of the coloring. Now, once we found the skull though, the skull was much too small to be a coyote. This is the skull. It's really little. So then we thought, could it be a cat? Could someone's cat have gotten back here and then met a terrible end? Then we actually looked back at the fur, and the fur was too long and too coarse, meaning too hard and wiry. You know, when you pet a cat, it's, oh, so soft. This was not like that. We didn't touch it, but it was definitely not soft. I didn't want to pet it. So putting those three together, we're like, what could this be? Then we found the toilet, apparently, their potty, and it looks like cat poop. So we were like, okay, this, one more point for cat. But then we looked in it, we're like, cats don't eat seeds. Cats are carnivorous, right? They eat other animals or insects. Like, they don't eat berries necessarily. So we're like, what is going on? Then good old internet helped us. We looked it up, and that type of poop looks very similar to cat poop, but has seeds all up in it, is going to be indicative of a raccoon. So you see that thought process that we went through? Oh, we're not sure, but we think it's this thing, based on what we observed. And then, oh, we got a new piece of information. Well, it's probably not what we first thought. So now it's this new idea. Oh, we got another piece of information. Turns out it's probably not that either. And we just kept questioning. We kept our minds open for new information to come in. Now imagine, on the other hand, if we had done the opposite, and we found, the jaw and the skull and the fur and the poop, and we said, even though the poop and the skull and the fur indicated that it was a raccoon, but our first thought was coyote, and we went, oh no, this is a coyote for sure. That would have been such a closed mind. We wouldn't have been open to the idea that it could have been something different. And in having our minds open, we were able to really learn the truth and really learn a lot more about what was near us. Super cool. So I highly recommend the Las Trampas Creek. It's quite close to the school. It's a little bit tricky to access sometimes, but there are trails that do go down to the creek, and it's a wonderful place to see a bunch of different things just all around. All right, enjoy!